This is Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, words on leadership, goal setting, productivity, and a whole lot more. I trust today you will consider this like a vitamin or a supplement for your heart and mind. And wherever you receive podcasts, would you please subscribe to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, leave a rating and a brief written review, and pass the word along to your friends. If you'd like to get on my calendar and have me call you to see if I can help you if you're unstuck, help you to come alongside and meet your dreams and what you're trying to do. I'm looking for the next level of leaders that I can come alongside and help. Just go to drronblake.com/call and you'll get on my calendar and I will give you a call. I want to speak today about the subject of the leader as a peacemaker. Now, there is a major difference between a peacekeeper and a peacemaker. Peacekeepers are those kinds of soldiers that go into hotly contested and high conflict areas with no more authority than to try to keep the peace. Keep the peace means you can't really intervene. You just try to keep the two sides apart. And one of the unintended consequences often of this kind of a setup is that the peacekeepers have both sides in the conflict turn against them. There's a major difference, and it's much, much more than semantics, between a peacekeeper and a peacemaker. A peacemaker actually has the authority, whether it comes from externally or internally, has the authority to step in, to try to intervene, make a difference, help solve the problems, work on things, bring the two sides together. So it may seem like an unusual topic to talk about the leader as a peacemaker. Here's the thing that many people don't want to accept. Conflict is a part of life. It is natural, it is normal, and it happens often. As a matter of fact, there is conflict even in the best of families. Because I have worked the majority of my life in the faith community, there are times when the bias of the faith community is all conflict is sinful, all conflict is not optimal, and therefore, since and when we do encounter some conflicts, some disagreements, we do everything within our power, it seems, to avoid it. I said already there's conflict in the best of families. I don't care how happily you've been married, there have been disagreements. Your children have not always, every moment of their entire existence, been perfect. Even Jesus, who people who don't follow him use him as an illustration of what meekness, mildness, and peacefulness involves. It was Jesus himself who one time said, "I did not come to bring peace, but to bring conflict." What he certainly meant is, anytime someone makes a decision for Christ, there's going to be conflict because someone will not like that decision. So I use that illustration from the life of Jesus to say his was not a conflict-free life. Anytime you make a decision or are a part of a decision-making team, you are going to run headfirst into conflict. And the best thing to do is to not ignore it. It was Peter Drucker who said, interestingly, that 90% of the leader's time is spent addressing human behavior. Let me say that again. 90% of a leadership's time is spent addressing human behavior. Well, that's almost the entirety of leadership. Maybe to orient ourselves as we begin to talk about the leader in conflict, dealing with conflict, hopefully not in conflict always, and being a peacemaker, let's think of how do we get into conflicts? How do disagreements arise? Where do these things come from? There are some environmental factors, some societal factors. Culture. There's going to be culture clash, not just in the culture is simply nothing more than the way we do things. Certain nations seem to have a conflict with one another, and oftentimes it's happened for so much It's just unbelievable that we think that here are people groups that are fighting and arguing, and it's gone on for millennia, almost to the point that no one even exactly remembers what the initial conflict was over. I've already used an illustration from Jesus' life, but we know that there are times that differences in religion leads to conflict. There are economical ideas in regarding conflict, the haves and the have-nots, and those who feel like others are getting more than they deserve. Politics, right now in my country, it's the major conflict. You can't have a civil conversation hardly with anyone regarding politics without it devolving into something not very pleasant. Just living in society, there's going to be conflicts. You can't live next door to people. You can't work and brush up against all of the individuals' personalities and things that are there. There are just all sorts of ways in our environment that are conducive to there being a conflict. And then there are individual reasons why there's conflict in the workplace and anywhere in the world. One of the biggest is our ego. Self-centeredness, selfishness. I want my way. And when you get more than one person wanting their way, it becomes extremely difficult. As you live in community and live amongst people, it becomes very difficult at times to coexist with people with different personality types. There are some personality types that you and I are drawn to, that we can relate to, we understand, and we sort of mesh with them. But likewise, there are also some personality types that are just very, very difficult and very draining, and at times can be a source of conflict. You know, interpersonal relationships, you get and start doing business and you start living life with people. It is just quite natural that disagreements and even conflicts will arise. There have been times in my life where there have been conflict with others, not over something that really happened, but nothing more than the person's perception of what happened. And I have to confess to the fact that there have been times in my life that I have perceived something someone said or did in a totally unfounded way. And if you are all taking a candid evaluation of yourselves, you will find that all of us have been guilty of that. Sometimes it's our backgrounds. We have grew up doing things a certain way, hearing things a certain way, and we don't understand that others don't have the same viewpoint. They don't have the same experiences. Their story and our story are not one and the same. And so we have to understand there are lots of reasons why there's conflict. Let me tell you the worst thing you can do as we look at conflict and the leader as a peacemaker. Conflict avoidance is the major problem. The major problem in your life right now is not the conflict you're facing. It's the fact it'll become a much more major difficulty if you avoid it. I have mentioned that in the position that I hold today, one of the things that I often deal with is the fact that folks have been avoiding the problem for so long that all the easier answers have been tried. There's almost no simple resolution to it. And everyone thought, let's kick the can down the alley and let someone in the future deal with that. I can guarantee you that every time conflict is avoided, it is almost a sure thing that the resolution of that conflict just became much more difficult. Leader, it is not your job to put off making decisions, tough decisions, and to allow the people who follow you to have to clean up that mess. That's why you get a paycheck. That's why you were hired. That's why you were there. That's why you have been placed where you are for such a time as this. Do not avoid conflict. Deal with it. Understanding that you are ultimately a peacemaker. What are some of the things that a peacemaker must be doing? First of all, it comes back to this one thing that I mention continually: communication. let's begin to communicate with all of the parties involved. What are our expectations? What are the aspirations that we are trying to reach by resolving the matter at hand? Communicate. If there's ever a place to over-communicate, it would be when we're in a conflict, when there's a difficulty and we are seeking to make peace. Making peace is going to involve listening. It's going to involve all parties listening, all parties seeking some sense of empathy, seeking to put yourself in the other person's position and looking at it from their position. I think this would help us with most conflict in our world. Pretend that you're a member of the opposite political party than you are. View the people you like from their perspective. View the circumstances and situations as they see them, not just as you see them. You have to be able to communicate. And a part of communication in this area means communicating what our expectations, what our desired outcomes, and that we are going to communicate that we are going to listen. We're not going to strike back. We're not going to yell. We're not going to scream. We're going to seek to communicate. The peacemaker leader seeks to clarify. And out of this communication, if it does nothing at all, it must help us to clarify what is the real problem. What is the real difficulty that needs addressing? Your job as a peacemaking leader is to bring clarity to a muddled, muddy, and confused situation. As the peacemaking leader, it is your responsibility to seek to bring healing to this situation and not destruction. Now, let me just be clear here. There are some times when you are called into things that have already transpired, at least the vast majority of it, before you knew anything about it or were involved, that it may be very difficult, if not impossible, to keep some destructive things from happening. I wish I could promise you no destruction zones, but that's not possible. But your job should not be to come in and blow the whole thing up. Too many leaders act like bulls in china shops rather than saying, let me come in, let me mediate, let me prayerfully and carefully see if we can't bring healing, if we need to ask forgiveness, if we need to make mid-course corrections, and if there are people who need to be held accountable for their actions. All of that is a part of it. The only thing that's not a part is quit avoiding it, quit ignoring the obvious. Everyone already sees it. But your job as the peacemaking leader is to say, what can I seek to do? What actions can I take? How can I listen? How can I help to find solutions to bring healing? And if you're going to be a peacemaking leader, one thing you are going to have a lot of is courage. You are going, because at the end of the day, when all is said and done, as you know what that means, when all is said and done, usually more is said than done. But your job is to be courageous. And there will be a decision that becomes apparent is the correct and the right decision to make, but no one has had the courage to do so. Be confident in yourself as a peacemaking leader to make the courageous decision, even if everyone seemingly is against it. The next thing that I would say about the peacemaking leader is you had better get used to being uncomfortable. This is a prerequisite for leadership on the best of conditions. You're going to have to get uncomfortable. Or maybe the other way to say it is you're going to have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. If you cannot stand to be uncomfortable, if it just causes you deep-seated pain, then you may not be able to be the effective leader that you really need to be. I have a couple of more that I want to say about the peacemaking leader. Always seek to understand. Don't seek to come out of it being right. Don't seek that I'm the know-it-all that has all the answers, but seek to understand the circumstance, the situation, what's been going on, how has this happened, and seek understanding. And the last one is, it goes hand in hand with the first one, which was communication. Listen, really listen. You and I will come in with biases of what we think is wrong and ideas of what we think needs to happen. Step back from that. Before you start making pronouncements, start listening. Before you start devising plans and strategies, listen. Listen to the people you agree with, but even more importantly, listen to the ones that you may intrinsically not agree with. Listen to the heated and the calm. Listen to the tall and the small. It makes no difference. You will not be able to gather all of the important, pertinent information that you need to make the decision that will make you a peacemaking leader if you are always talking and never listening. You, my friend, should be a peacemaker. That's why you're there. You've been listening to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom. Words on leadership, goal setting, productivity, and a whole lot more. I trust today this has been like a vitamin or a supplement for your mind and heart. And please subscribe to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom and go and be a peacemaker wherever you are today. And remember, leader, you are doing better than you think you are. You are where you are for a reason. And until next time, this is Dr. Ron saying, have a great and blessed day.